Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Association of the United States Army's annual conference and trade show in Washington, D.C., the #1 event for U.S. Army leaders from around the world to gather here to discuss the future of the service, its strategy, technology, doctrine, and more, and budgets and more. Our coverage here is sponsored by Bell, Textron Company, Elbit Systems of America, L3 Technologies, Leonardo DRS, and Safran. And we're here at the Ultra Electronics booth, one of the world's most innovative companies, to talk to Tony White, who is the Chief Technology Officer of the company's ground systems business. Tony, it's a pleasure seeing you.
You too. It's very good. It's been a while since I've been out here, a year, and I'm losing my voice because it's been a busy week so far.
Exactly. So what are the top products you guys are highlighting, right? The U.S. Army has made it clear we're in a great power competition mode, but at the same time we'll have to do counterinsurgency, a much more contested electromagnetic spectrum, some of the things that you guys are quite expert at. Talk to us a little bit about what the top products in the conversations you're having with the U.S. Army are.
Sure. Well, I think that the big one for us is a product called Ultralinks, which is a wearable soldier system that was developed in the UK to meet a UK requirement that has got a massive interest now in the US with the Net Warrior program. And Ultralinks for us is getting a lot of pull. We've spent a lot of time with the Net Warrior team recently at Fort Benning on the Army Warfighting Experiment, where we've had some success in developing a relationship with Net Warrior to the point, I think, where we can really benefit with some technology with them. It's a wearable power and data hub that's smart. So it's like a small computer that allows them to integrate devices they've not thought about integrating before to give the warfighter a better chance in the field.
And what are some other things? Because you guys have everything from antenna to jammers to everything else here.
Sure. So this is Trilos radio, so tri-band radio called Orion, which is picking up a contract right now with PEO. We have products for hand control for UAV and UGV, so kind of unmanned areas. We've got products here on show for vehicle electronics, where we're fielding up power and data management onto vehicles both in the UK and Europe and now in the States. We've got product here around us as a product called Hyperspike, which is an acoustic hailer for crowd control. So a huge portfolio of product. It's really difficult to categorize it into one area. We cover a lot of ground.
But the link system that you have is just extraordinary in terms of personal power management, which I think is game-changing and why you guys, there's been so much interest in it. So you're Chief Technology Officer, you're a technologist, an engineer. What are some of the most either technology trends that you find exciting or terrifying or both? You know, where do you see like, wow, okay, that's going to be a problem we're going to have to address, or that's a great opportunity, we should be exploiting it?
I think for me right now it's all on wearables. If someone said, Tony, what's the thing? It's wearables. Everything in our home life is around wearable technology. So it's mobile, it's wearable, it's in the cloud, it's AI, it's machine learning. So all of those things. So we're doing some work now on all of that. So what's the next generation of wearables? Now we've got links as the kind of the integration piece in the middle. What can I hang on it? So I'm looking at everything from gesture control to smart glasses to thought control and doing stuff with the brain to biometrics, all kinds of different things that are related to the wearable technology we're seeing in the consumer market, and what may be coming in 2 or 3 years' time there, and how we might be able to pull that in now and adopt it for military use.
And you mentioned thought control, and you know, I know that there's always a tendency of people going to tinfoil hats and things like that, but what does that mean? Because that is, in the cognitive field, that is something that folks are more and more experimenting with and see as a future opportunity.
Sure. So this is in the field, it's known as brain-computer interfacing. So it's the ability to take brain waves, literally brain waves, and interface that with a computer and allow your brain to command things on the computer. And that might be as simple as have a thought to press the space bar or manipulate something on the screen. And what we're looking at is how we can take that thought control technology, map it through links, and have the things you've got connected up controlled by thought. So the ability to be able to maybe change the channel on the radio or turn the volume up and down on the radio or activate a device hands-free using thought.
I wish I could hands-free activate somebody to be more considerate occasionally, talking loudly, for example, on a quiet train. One of the two soapbox issues for you are, first, all the different standards that different militaries have. The UK, for example, has power purity and electromagnetic interference standards that are unique from anything around the world. We discussed, if an armored vehicle is making its way across the ocean, somehow it becomes non-compliant by the time it approaches the UK. The United States has a different standards than its mil-spec standards, and then the rest of the world have their own standards. And we're in a world where at least allied countries are cooperating more closely. What sort of work has to happen in an international standard? Because we have ISO standards. The commercial world has an enormous number of universal standards that make business easier and cooperation easier. What kind of a system do we need globally to ensure that systems are interoperable, are able to at least connect and work together?
I think it's a challenge, and the challenge is not new, and it's being chiseled away at it. So my frustration is it could be happening quicker. So there's lots of people who have a similar mind to mine that, why do we have these different standards, and then if we understand why, then how can they be similar, or how can we align them a bit better? And the tendency is buried in history. There's a lot of things to do with sensitive equipment, which means we have to have more sensitive power standards in the UK. And we're not alone. There are other countries that have sensitive equipment too, and we really do need to look at those. We get some really ironic things, some crazy things, like when I test something, I put it on a bench, and the standard defines the height and size of the bench that I'm testing on. And the differences between the tests are a few inches. So the US standard says it needs to be this high, the UK standard needs to say it's this high, and therefore you can't use the same test, you've got to do two different tests. And those tests are expensive and they take time. So that is an easy fix. We need to harmonise that. We can't keep arguing about 2 or 3 inches of bench size for being the differentiator. It's just ridiculous. So I think those are my frustrations, and those things take time. So already in the UK there's a rewrite of our power standard underway, and I sit on that rewrite panel. And my in is to say, come on guys, this is our opportunity to start that harmonisation. So hopefully the ball's rolling. My frustration is just not happening quick enough, and I think there are other standards, not just the power one, we need to address.
I was going to say that bench height is the bench maker got that standard written, and he said, hey, my bench is better than your bench is, and I got in the rules. What are some of the rules you think should be changed? I mean, I think the bench height one, I'm sure may have some vague connection, but what are some other standards that could go the way of the dodo?
Okay, so we've got different EMI requirements, and actually the world we live in is you mentioned the coalition stuff, so our EMI requirement in the UK is different from the US. Actually, we're on the same operation and seeing the same threat, so it kind of makes sense that EMI stuff should be about the same. We're seeing the same threat, the same thing. We're in the same environment. So EMI is one, and the other one, of course, is perhaps redefinition or better definition of the term open architecture.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing, because you're like, it's a million. Everybody who says open architecture has a different definition of it.
Sure, I'm a great advocate of open architecture. I sit on the UK MOD working groups for land open systems architecture, and I'm a great advocate of it. The problem is that everyone is now talking about it. Everything has an open architecture, and whether you believe it has an open architecture or not, someone will tell you that their system has an open architecture. So what is openness? What do we mean? What do we mean actually by architecture? I think if we get some common understanding, then actually allow us to have a better conversation about having and integrating open things. Because right now it's quite a confused picture. So I can pick up something that a vendor claims is open and demonstrate that actually it's not very open at all. I can pick up something that is very open and say, look, here's an open architecture, and they would disagree with me. And I think that issue is prolific. I think it's very difficult to talk about without getting into some detail. I'll give you an example of something, and it's certainly not a criticism. Bear in mind, I'm in the US. So the US have a standard called Victory for vehicle electronics, and that standard is open. But it's open to a US citizen working on a US defence program. It's not open to anyone else in the world. So it's sitting in the UK, we can't get hold of Victory. Well, how open is a standard if it's only available in its host nation to their own citizens? Now, that's I guess what I mean by open. We need to get a better baseline about what we mean by open, and then we can then really realise the benefits and those coalition things, because we can start to bring together interoperability between those nations, because we're all sharing the same open standard.
How much cost do you reckon is burned up because of this? How much money and effort have to go into harmonizing these standards that are more impediments perhaps than actual necessary standards?
Oh, I think for the open architecture standards, and I'm a firm believer in this. Let's see if this works. I think it's not a lot of spend, and we have to do it because the situation that we've had historically is closed. So what I mean, similar phrases get used, but we talk about vendor lock-in or being locked to a particular solution for life because you've bought something that's closed. So I've designed something, here's my system, I own all the interfaces, and if you want to change something, you have to come to me and you have to pay me lots of money and we'll make a change. In our open world, and we do this at home, everything you have at home is probably has an open standard, has an open architecture that allows you to make changes. So an Android phone, or Samsung phone running Android is a great example of something that's really open. Something a little bit more closed, Apple. So Apple's open, kind of. It's Apple, it has to be Apple certified, you've got an Apple connector, so it's not so open.
And do you think that an adoption of a commercial standard is a better way to go ultimately?
So what you'll find in the open standard, open architecture world is exactly that. So what you'll find is that the standards like Victory and generic vehicle architecture in the UK and NATO are making use of those open standards that are publicly available. So Ethernet is an open standard, DDS is an open standard. So we're starting to use those commercially available standards and wrap them in military speak. And that allows us to make use of and maintain our world using those commercially available standards. And that is bringing down cost.
Tony White, the Chief Technology Officer at Ultra Electronics Land Business. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy it, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Great. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Unless nobody lets you in the country again because of that. Just kidding. Thanks, Tony.
I know their thoughts already.